Okay, this is Stephen Horn. I'm trying a first broadcast for This Week in the Triangle. I've been publishing a Substack for the last 2 years, starting in January 2022, where I just write original art. Sorry, I had a little audio glitch there, which is exactly why I'm doing this stream in the middle of the night to sort of work some of the kinks out. And really the purpose of this is mainly for me to just get better at broadcasting and talking about news, and we'll see if anyone tunes in. So as I was saying, I have published This Week in the Triangle for over 2 years at this point. I write original articles reporting on news here in the Greater Triangle area of North Carolina, and I also publish a weekly roundup where I give some summaries of some stories that are happening here locally. And so to start off with, we're going to be talking about stories which happened last week over the new year. See if I can pull this up. Okay, and there we have it. You can see we have some stories out of Johnson County, Harnett County, Durham, and of course UNC-Chapel Hill. So to start off, we have Johnson County. This is about Governor Cooper. At the end of the year, as he is coming out of office, he issued clemency for a murderer who committed a murder in Johnson County back in 2007. So he was convicted in 2009 and he was sentenced to murder. Basically what happened, as far as I could tell by looking at some of the reporting, is that he broke into a home in Selma. He and a co-conspirator were intending to rob the 5 occupants of that home, but when one of them fled, Bacote or Bacote, I'm not sure how the name is pronounced, but Bacote pulled out a gun, shot him. And so he was tried. 2 years later, he was sentenced for murder. And he has been on death row since then. That is a bit of an injustice, in my opinion, that people are sentenced to death and they sit on death row for 15 years. They still have not been executed for the murder that they committed. Now, Bacote in Johnson County had filed under the Racial Justice Act, which has now been repealed. But basically what that law in North Carolina allowed defendants to argue that race was a significant factor in the death penalty being sought, and that therefore the death penalty should be reduced to a life sentence without parole. So those court proceedings, I believe they were still ongoing when Governor Cooper entered this order of clemency, which did the same thing, reduce his death sentence to life in prison without parole. So this is a picture. I believe this was posted on the Center for Death Penalty Litigation, which had an article about his case that I was able to find. So, and remember, this is not a case where he was convicted in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. No, this was 2009. So basically what they're saying is in 2009, Johnson County, the prosecution was so racist that the death penalty he received for the murder that, his lawyers are not denying that he committed the murder. They're not saying he should be let out because he's innocent. They're saying he's black and convicted in Johnson County. And so, another thing I noticed that was interesting was when you look it up in the court system, he was only 19 years old at the time, but I could find at least 9 prior cases against him. In his short life, he was already in the court system. He had apparently already committed other crimes when he committed this murder in Johnson County. But apparently the death penalty is not appropriate, according to Governor Cooper. And so when Cooper issued these orders of clemency, he did not say specifically, what reasons there were for each individual clemency. He issued 15 out of the 89 requests for clemency that his office received, but he did list the potential influence of race as one of the factors he took into account. So it's potentially why Cooper decided to reduce Bacote's sentence from the death penalty to life in prison without parole. And so at the same time, Cooper issued pardons of forgiveness to two men who had been convicted in the drug trade. So we have Brandon Wallace, 43, convicted in Lee County in 2007, and John Campbell, 63, convicted in Wake County in 1984. So basically, that's where, they're both out of prison. They've had, good behavior since they've been released. Responsible civic behavior and community service is language in these pardons. And so there's these defendants as well. The next story we have here is out of Harnett County. So last week, we learned that, let me pull this article up as well. Yes, so last week, a man named Jamie Rosiah Griffin was arrested and charged with attempted murder for allegedly dousing a woman in gasoline and setting her on fire. Now, the crime occurred, when was it? It was earlier in the month. Yes, December 16th. So the crime occurred on December 16th. This young woman was taken to the hospital. The Harnett County Sheriff's Office ended up putting out a media release saying, we're looking for the three unidentified individuals who committed this attack. The story is that they walked up behind her as she was walking down the road. This was near the intersection of Highway 27 and Barbecue Church Road. And they doused her in gasoline, set her on fire. Very gruesome crime. She was in the hospital. I believe that the GoFundMe said she sustained third-degree burns over 70% of her body. So very, very terrible crime. And so this young man, Jamie Rosiah Griffin, 23, had been charged as one of these individuals who attacked her. That was last week. And so this week, Griffin's mother, LaTanya Renee Murchison, was arrested not for attacking this woman directly, but by helping her son escape and trying to cover up the crime that her son has committed. That is what is alleged in the arrest warrant that we got this week. So it says, the defendant, knowing that Jamie Rosiah Griffin had committed that felony, that's, attacking the woman, setting her on fire, did knowingly assist that person in attempting to escape and in escaping detection, arrest, and punishment by transporting the victim away from the scene of the crime to conceal its location, attempting to cover up the crime by not contacting law enforcement, not being truthful about the crime once law enforcement was alerted to the crime, and attempting to discard the victim's clothing. So, if she did that, as was alleged, that is a pretty serious crime, since I believe, let's look at what the degree of severity of attempted first-degree murder. Does it say F? So I believe that this is a B2 felony, which I believe that would make the accessory after the fact, which Murchison is charged with, I believe that would make it a Class D felony. I believe it's 2 steps lower. So basically, we have here, serious crime. Once again, the sheriff's office did say that there were 3 individuals involved in the attack. So we'll see if they're able to identify and make arrests of the other 2. And one of the reasons why this crime caught my attention is because at the same time, around when the sheriff's office was looking into information, we got this story out of New York where a woman was on the subway. She was set on fire. I believe maybe she was homeless. Maybe it was another homeless person who set her on fire. But this was a story that was, all over the news. There were pictures. I think they might have even had video. And just kind of contrasting that with, another woman who was set on fire. This was not fatal, but she was severely injured. But, apparently it happened where there was no cameras, no video. This happened out in Harnett County, not exactly the center of American life like New York is. But it's interesting how a story with, pretty shocking elements might not necessarily get as much coverage just because of where it happens, and also that it doesn't have this associated imagery with it. So there's an update on the victim's medical fundraiser as well, that said that Ashanti Downey, who was severely burned, is now able to walk with assistance, and she has surgery upcoming in the future. And our next story is out of Durham, announcing Veganuary perhaps. basically encouraging people to become vegan for the month of January. Now, they do, if you look at the website, you can see they say there's health reasons and climate reasons, which they suggest that you should become vegan. And I thought the climate was a little more interesting along the political lines. You know, they're blaming meat for anthropogenic climate change, and they also talk about how going vegan can save one non-human animal per day, as if humans are animals. Perhaps that's what the Durham Mayor thinks of Durham citizens, is that they are human animals as opposed to non-human animals. And what is even crazier, I thought, is that the website for this Veganuary encourages Durham citizens to endorse the plant-based treaty, which part of that is it calls for no land use change, ecosystem degradation, or deforestation for animal agriculture. So that, you know, there's not necessarily, there's a lot of agriculture in North Carolina, maybe not so much in Durham city limits specifically, but, you know, to say no, no land can be switched from a non-agricultural use to an agricultural use, you know, that seems like a pretty radical policy proposal to me. And I just have some figures here about the North Carolina hog industry. There's over 8 million hogs in North Carolina, and the annual revenue varies between 2 and 3 billion. That's the cash receipts. And of course, I had to mention a story out of nearby Wilson a couple years ago, where an employee at their plant or their pig feed processing facility made a video, put it out on TikTok. It went viral, where he showed that they were grinding up old or stale bread to use in the pig food. But what they were not doing was taking the bread out of the plastic wrappers first. So they are grinding up plastic, feeding it to pigs. Now, apparently there is some step in the process that was supposed to vacuum the plastic out, but what this employee was saying was that this is not effective. So your North Carolina raised hogs might be eating plastic, and who knows, maybe they have some plastic in their meat that is getting transferred to you. I'm not an expert on that topic. You know, maybe some food scientists or material scientists will take a look at that sometimes. And finally, I believe, this is our last story, is from UNC. So the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression released their data for, I guess the data is from 2024, I believe. And basically it's ranking colleges across the nation based on, you know, freedom of speech, expression, whatnot. And so we have an article here from the UNC Alumni Free Speech Alliance, you know, which covers some of the figures from this FIRE report. So we have nearly 3/4 of the students, 74%, they self-censor at least once or twice per month, with 1/3 of the students doing so a couple of times a week. So basically self-censor, you want to say something, but you don't. And what I thought interesting was also the figures on how many students think that it is acceptable to either shout down a speaker or to use violence to stop a campus speech. And what they have here is that 11% say that it is sometimes or always acceptable to use violence to stop a campus speech. And, you know, they multiplied that out. So basically that's 2,200 UNC students who believe violence is acceptable to stop a speech. And I think this is, you know, reflected in some of the incidents we've seen over the past year, specifically with the you know, anti-Israel, pro-Palestine movement, where they you know, created this encampment. They fought with police a little when they tried to shut it down. They vandalized buildings at UNC in support of this cause. And they also disrupted an event with Barry Weiss and I believe another speaker over this pro-Palestine issue. Now, one of the interesting things I noticed, I was digging into the FIRE data a little. They have a database of basically of like academic scholarly freedom, and I thought it was interesting that the incidents they have where basically university administration is perhaps suppressing speech in some way, it was generally from the right. Whereas when it was students shutting down speakers or events, it was from the left. So basically, how I interpret that is that if you're familiar with UNC, it seems to be that the professors, that's what I'm looking for, the professors, the administration, whatever, tend to be left-wing, reflective of the student body, whereas the administration, coming from the UNC system, which the legislature has a big role in appointing those, is not necessarily comfortable with them using the state-sponsored platform of UNC to, spread leftist dogma. So that was, so if you want to hear stories like this, you can get it in your inbox every week. I send it out as an email on Substack. That's thisweekinthetriangle.com. If anyone does actually stumble across this broadcast, this was more of a little practice run for me. But if you were listening and you appreciated it,